Tae-ho Kim walked down the long hallway of the Galactic Educational Consortium Academy. His footsteps echoed against the metal walls. The ceiling was much higher than what humans were used to. It had to be. Some of the alien students were very tall. He carried his data pad and a small bag with his supplies. Other students moved around him, but none spoke to him. They never did. Tae-ho had been at the academy for 3 months now. He was still the only human student. The other students looked so different from him. Boram Lee was a Zenthari. Her skin looked like it was made of blue crystal. When light hit her, she sparkled. She was taller than Tae-ho and very thin. Her people came from a planet with low gravity. Minsu Park was a Valdorian. He had 6 arms and could use all of them at the same time. His skin was green and smooth. His eyes were large and black. The Valdorians were known for being very smart with technology. Hye-jin Choi was a Kalarian. She had patches on her skin that glowed with soft light. The patches changed color when she felt different emotions. Right now they were dim purple, which meant she was thinking hard about something. These were just 3 of his classmates. There were many more. 12 different species went to this academy. It was supposed to be the best school in the galaxy for learning about different life forms. Tae-ho entered his classroom. It was big and round. The desks were arranged in a circle so everyone could see each other. The walls were covered with screens that could show anything the teacher wanted. He took his usual seat. It was in the back, away from the other students. He had tried sitting with them at first, but they always found reasons to move away. Some said humans smelled strange. Others said humans were too loud when they breathed. A few just stared at him like he was some kind of animal in a zoo. The truth was simple. The other species thought humans were not very smart. Earth had only joined the galactic community 5 years ago. Most alien species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. To them, humans were like children who had just learned to walk. So young Yoon entered the classroom. She was a Delphian. Her people could read minds, but only a little bit. She always stayed far away from Tae-ho. She said human thoughts were too loud and messy. They gave her headaches. Dayuno came in next. She was a Zephyrian. She had long, thin arms that looked like wings. Her people could fly on their home planet. Here she just used them to help her move around faster. Junho Kang was amorphic. His people could change their shape. He usually looked like a tall gray humanoid. But sometimes he would shift into different forms to show off. The other students thought it was amazing. Tae-ho thought it was just showing off. Woo Jin-ryu walked in with his breathing mask on. He was a cerulean. His people lived underwater. The mask helped him breathe the air that most other species needed. Sua-han was already in her seat. She was a Stellarian. Her skin was green like a plant. Her people could make their own food from sunlight. She spent a lot of time near the windows during breaks. Young-soo Nam entered the room talking loudly to his friends. He was an Etherian. His people glowed with a soft white light. They thought they were better than most other species because they were made of energy instead of solid matter. Young-soo especially liked to make jokes about humans. I heard they still use primitive tools on their planet, Young-soo said to his friends. Can you believe they still eat dead animals? His friends laughed. Tae-ho pretended not to hear them. He had heard worse things over the past 3 months. Mira Cho was the last to enter. She was a Glacian. Her people came from an ice planet. She was always cold on the academy station. She wore thick clothes and never talked much. The classroom was full now. 24 students from 12 different species, and 1 human who sat alone. Dr. Veltara entered the room. She was a Thylorian. Her people looked like tall, thin cats that walked on 2 legs. She had fur that changed color based on her mood. Today it was silver, which meant she was excited about something. Good morning, students, Dr. Veltara said. Her voice was smooth and deep. Today we begin a very special lesson about predator and prey relationships in the galaxy. The students all paid attention. Dr. Veltara was known for her unusual teaching methods. She never did boring lectures. She always had interesting experiments and demonstrations. You have all studied the basic concepts, she continued. You know that every ecosystem has hunters and hunted, predators and prey. But today we will explore something deeper. We will look at how these relationships work between intelligent species. Some students looked confused. Others looked interested. Tae-ho just listened. Tomorrow I will bring some very special guests to our classroom, Dr. Veltara said. Her fur turned bright orange, which meant she was very excited. They will help us understand things that books cannot teach. What kind of guests? Boram asked. Her crystal skin flashed with curiosity. Predators, Dr. Veltara said simply. Young ones, but still predators. We will observe how they interact with different species. It will be very educational. The room went quiet. Most of the alien students came from species that had evolved from prey animals. The idea of being near predators, even young ones, made them nervous. Young-Soo raised his hand. Is it safe? He asked. Perfectly safe, Dr. Veltara replied. They will be contained and monitored, but they will be able to sense each of you. That is the point of the exercise. Taeho felt curious about this lesson. On Earth, he had grown up around many predators. Dogs, cats, and other hunting animals were common. His family had owned a German shepherd named Max. Taeho had never been afraid of predators. The bell rang, ending the class. Students began packing their things and leaving. They talked excitedly about tomorrow's lesson. Some seemed worried. Others seemed thrilled. Taeho packed his things slowly. He was always the last to leave. It was easier that way. He didn't have to deal with the awkward silences when other students tried to avoid walking near him. As he walked back to his room, Taeho thought about the lesson. He wondered what kind of predators Dr. Veltara would bring. He hoped they would be interesting. At least it would be something different from the usual lectures about alien biology. His room was small but comfortable. It had a bed, a desk, and a small window that looked out at the stars. Taeho sat at his desk and opened his datapad. He had homework to do, but first he looked up information about galactic predators. He wanted to be prepared for tomorrow's lesson. As he read, he learned about many dangerous creatures from different worlds. Some hunted alone. Others hunted in packs. All of them were described as deadly and feared. Taeho smiled a little as he read. Tomorrow would definitely be interesting. The next morning, Taeho arrived at class early. He wanted to get a good seat for whatever Dr. Veltara had planned. The classroom looked different today. The desks had been moved back against the walls. The center of the room was empty except for some strange metal boxes. Other students began arriving. They all looked nervous. Their usual chatter was much quieter than normal. Even Young-Soo, who was always loud and confident, seemed worried. Those boxes look really strong, Min-Soo whispered to his friends. All 6 of his arms moved nervously as he spoke. What do you think is inside them? Something dangerous, Hyejin replied. The patches on her skin were flashing yellow and red, which meant she was scared and excited at the same time. Boram stood as far from the boxes as possible. Her crystal skin was very pale, which happened when Xantheris were frightened. My people have stories about predators, she said quietly. Terrible stories. The boxes were about the size of large suitcases. They were made of thick metal with small holes in the sides for air. Taeho could hear small sounds coming from inside them, scratching, movement, and something that sounded almost like breathing. Dr. Veltara entered the room. Her fur was bright red today, which meant she was very excited about the lesson. She carried a small device in her hand. It looked like a remote control. Good morning, students, she said. Today you will learn something that cannot be found in any textbook. You will observe real predator behavior. She walked over to the metal boxes. Inside these containers are 3 young Rectharian hunters. They are only 6 months old, but they are already dangerous. So Young made a small sound of fear. Her psychic abilities meant she could sense emotions from other creatures. I can feel them, she whispered. They're so intense. The Rectharians come from a death world called Rakthos Prime, Dr. Veltara explained. Everything on that planet is trying to kill everything else. The Rectharians are apex predators there. Even as babies, they are incredibly dangerous. She held up her remote control device. These young ones have been raised in captivity. They have never hurt anyone, but their instincts are still very strong. They will react to each of you based on those instincts. Dayun's wing arms fluttered nervously. What exactly will they do? They will decide if you are a threat, prey, or something else entirely, Dr. Veltara said. This will teach us about how predators think and react. It will also teach us about ourselves. The sounds from inside the boxes were getting louder. Whatever was in there seemed to know that something was about to happen. Everyone please move to the walls, Dr. Veltara instructed. Give them plenty of space. And try to stay calm. They can sense fear. The alien students pressed themselves against the walls. Tejo moved back too, but he wasn't as scared as the others. He was curious more than anything else. Dr. Veltara pressed a button on her device. The first box opened with a soft click. Nothing happened for a moment. Then a small head poked out of the opening. It looked like a cross between a large cat and a small dragon. Its eyes were bright yellow and very intelligent. It had sharp teeth and small but deadly-looking claws. The creature was about the size of a house cat, but it moved differently. Every step was careful and purposeful. It held its head high and looked around the room like it owned the place. The second box opened. Another young Raktharian emerged. This one was slightly larger and had darker fur. It immediately started examining the room, sniffing the air and watching the students. The third box released the last cub. This one was the smallest, but it seemed the most alert. Its eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail of its surroundings. All three cubs stood in the center of the room. They didn't seem interested in the boxes anymore. They were focused entirely on the students around the walls. Tejo watched them carefully. They reminded him of the big cats he had seen in documentaries on Earth. Tigers and lions moved the same way, confident, dangerous, always ready to act. The first cub started walking along the wall where the alien student stood. It stopped in front of Boram. She was shaking so hard that her crystal skin was making tiny tinkling sounds. The cub sniffed in her direction. Then it made a sound that was somewhere between a growl and a purr. It seemed satisfied with something and moved on. The second cub approached Minsu. All 6 of the Valdorian's arms were pressed against the wall behind him. The cub looked up at him for a long moment. Then it also made the growling purr sound and continued moving. One by one, the cubs examined each alien student. They spent different amounts of time with each one. Some students they barely looked at. Others they studied for several minutes. So Young was having the worst time. Her psychic abilities meant she could feel what the cubs were feeling. "They're so focused," she gasped. "Their minds are like sharp knives. They see everything as either food or enemy or nothing important." When a cub approached her, she actually fainted. Wujin had to catch her before she hit the floor. The cubs seemed to find the alien students interesting but not very important. They looked at each one, made their assessment, and moved on. None of the students seemed to worry them or excite them very much. Then something strange happened. All 3 cubs stopped what they were doing at the same time. They turned their heads toward the part of the wall where Tejo was standing. Tejo felt their eyes on him. The cubs stared at him with an intensity they hadn't shown toward any of the other students. But it wasn't the same look they had given the aliens. This was different. The largest cub started walking toward him. The other 2 followed. Their movement was purposeful, but it didn't seem threatening. It seemed almost curious. "What's happening?" Dr. Veltara asked quietly. This wasn't what she had expected. The cubs reached Tejo and stopped in front of him. They sat down and looked up at him. Their heads tilted to one side like dogs do when they're trying to understand something. Tejo looked down at them. He wasn't afraid. They were obviously dangerous, but something about them seemed familiar. They reminded him of Max, his old dog. Max used to look at him the same way. The smallest cub made a different sound, not the growling purr it had made at the other students. This was softer, almost friendly. The other students watched in amazement. The cubs that had barely paid attention to them were now focused entirely on the human. "This is very unusual," Dr. Veltara said. Her fur had changed to deep blue, which meant she was confused and fascinated. The largest cub stood up and took a step closer to Tejo. It sniffed in his direction, just like it had done with the other students. But then it did something it hadn't done before. It approached even closer and actually touched its nose to Tejo's hand. Tejo stayed very still. The cub's nose was wet and cold, just like a dog's nose. After a moment, the cub stepped back and made a sound that was definitely friendly. The other 2 cubs made similar sounds. Then all 3 cubs did something that shocked everyone in the room. They lay down in front of Tejo, not like they were getting ready to attack, like they were getting comfortable, like they planned to stay there. "I don't understand," Young-Soo said. His glowing form flickered with confusion. "Why are they acting different with the human?" Dr. Veltara was taking notes on her datapad as fast as she could. "This is not the behavior I expected," she admitted. "Raktharian cubs should be treating him the same way they treated all of you." But the cubs clearly had no intention of treating Tejo like the other students. They seemed perfectly content to sit near him. One of them even closed its eyes and seemed to take a small nap. The alien students stared in disbelief. The dangerous predators that had made them all terrified were acting like friendly pets around the human they all thought was weak and primitive. Tejo looked down at the cubs. He still wasn't sure what was happening, but he wasn't afraid. Something about this felt right, even though he couldn't explain why. The lesson was supposed to last for 1 hour, but the cubs showed no interest in doing anything except staying near Tejo. Dr. Veltara tried to encourage them to move around more, but they ignored her. When the bell rang, Dr. Veltara used her remote control to open the boxes again. The cubs looked at the boxes, then looked at Tejo, then looked at the boxes again. They seemed reluctant to leave. Finally, they got up and walked back to their containers. But they kept looking back at Tejo as they went. As the alien students left the classroom, they were all talking at once. They had never seen anything like what had just happened, and none of them could explain why the predators had acted so differently around the human. Tejo was the last to leave, as always. But this time, it wasn't because he was avoiding the other students. He was thinking about what had just happened. The cubs had recognized something in him, something the other students didn't see. He just didn't know what it was yet. The next day, word about the strange lesson had spread throughout the academy. Students from other classes kept asking Tejo's classmates about what had happened. But none of them had good answers. The predators just ignored us, Boram told a group of curious students during lunch. They barely looked at us. But with the human, she trailed off, shaking her crystal head. It was like they knew him, Heejin added. Her skin patches were flashing with confusion. Like they were old friends or something. Tejo sat alone at his usual table eating his lunch. He could hear the other students talking about him. Some of their theories were very strange. Maybe humans smell like Rectharian food, one student suggested. Or maybe they smell like Rectharian enemies, another said. But they weren't acting aggressive, a third pointed out. They were acting friendly. Dr. Veltara had spent the evening researching everything she could find about human behavior and Rectharian instincts. She had contacted experts on both species, but no one could explain what had happened. When class began that day, she decided to try the experiment again. Yesterday's lesson raised many questions, she told the students. Today we will try to find some answers. The metal boxes were back in the center of the room. The alien students took their positions against the walls even further back than they had the day before. I want everyone to observe very carefully, Dr. Veltara said. Watch not just what the cubs do, but how they do it. Look at their body language. Listen to the sounds they make. She opened the first box. The largest cub emerged and immediately looked around the room. Its eyes passed over all the alien students without much interest. Then it spotted Tejo and its whole body changed. Its ears perked up. Its tail started moving in what looked like a happy wag. It made a soft chirping sound that definitely seemed friendly. The second and third boxes opened. Those cubs had the same reaction. They scanned the room, dismissed the alien students, and focused on Tejo. But this time they didn't just sit in front of him. The largest cub walked over to where Tejo was standing and lay down right next to his feet. The second cub approached his other side. The smallest cub did something that made everyone gasp. It climbed up onto Tejo's lap. Tejo had been sitting cross-legged on the floor against the wall. The small cub scrambled up his leg and settled on his lap like a house cat. It started making a deep rumbling sound that was clearly purring. That's impossible, So Young whispered. She had recovered from fainting the day before, but she still looked pale. Rectharians don't purr. They're apex predators. But the sound coming from the cub was definitely purring. The other two cubs seemed content to lean against Tejo's legs. All three of them had their eyes half closed in contentment. Daon fluttered her wing arms nervously. Why isn't he afraid? She asked. Those things could kill him in seconds, it was true. Even as cubs, the Rectharians had sharp claws and teeth. They were strong and fast, but Tejo seemed completely relaxed with them. He was even gently petting the one on his lap. This is very strange behavior, Dr. Veltara said. She was recording everything with multiple cameras. Rectharian cubs are supposed to be cautious around unknown species. They should be assessing threats and prey, but they're acting like they trust him completely. Junho shifted into his nervous form, which was smaller and had more arms. Maybe it's some kind of human magic, he suggested. Young-Soo laughed, but it sounded forced. Humans don't have magic. They're barely evolved from primitive animals. But even as he said it, Young-Soo looked uncertain. The evidence in front of him didn't match what he believed about humans. The cub on Tai-Ho's lap stretched and yawned, showing its sharp teeth. Then it curled up like it was taking a nap. The other two cubs were also very relaxed. One of them had actually closed its eyes. They're treating him like pack family, Woojin observed through his breathing mask. Like he's one of them. Dr. Veltara nodded slowly. That's exactly what it looks like. But why? She had the cubs for 3 days for this lesson series. She decided to try different experiments. She asked Tai-Ho to move to different parts of the room. The cubs followed him. She asked him to sit in a chair. They arranged themselves around the chair. She even tried separating one cub from the others by putting it across the room. It ignored the alien students completely and went straight back to Tai-Ho. Try talking to them, Dr. Veltara suggested. Tai-Ho looked down at the cub on his lap. Hello there, he said softly. The cub opened its eyes and looked up at him. It made a small chirping sound, almost like it was answering him. Good morning, Tai-Ho said to the other two cubs. They both looked at him and made similar sounds. It was like they were having a conversation. The alien students watched in amazement. They had never seen predators act this way. On their homeworlds, predators were things to be feared and avoided. They were dangers that had to be managed and controlled. But these predators seemed to see Tai-Ho as a friend. Or maybe even as family. I want to try something, Dr. Veltara said. Tai-Ho, please walk to the other side of the room. Tai-Ho gently moved the cub off his lap and stood up. All three cubs immediately stood up too. They followed him across the room like loyal dogs. Now everyone else, please try to approach them. Boram took a single step forward. All three cubs immediately turned to look at her. Their body language changed completely. They went from relaxed and friendly to alert and watchful. They didn't seem aggressive, but they were clearly ready for trouble. Boram quickly stepped back. The cubs relaxed again. Minsu tried next, using just one arm to reach toward them. The cubs watched him carefully but didn't move. When he pulled his arm back, they lost interest in him. One by one, the other students tried to approach. The cubs' reaction was always the same. They would watch the approaching student carefully, assess whether they were a threat, and then either ignore them or warn them to stay back. But none of them ever showed the cubs the kind of friendly interest they showed Tai-Ho. It's like they see him as part of their pack, Mira said quietly. She had been watching very carefully. But they see us as something else. Prey, So Young said bluntly. They see us as prey. That's what I'm sensing from their minds. When they look at us, they're thinking about hunting. This made several students step even further back. But not the human, So Young continued. When they look at him, they think about family, safety, pack. Dr. Veltara was taking notes as fast as she could. This was completely different from anything in the research about Raktharian behavior. There must be something about human biology that triggers this response, she said. Something that makes them see Tai-Ho as a fellow predator instead of prey. But humans aren't predators, Young-Soo protested. They're weak. They don't have claws or fangs or anything dangerous. The largest cub seemed to hear the dismissive tone in Young-Soo's voice. It looked directly at the Etherian and made a low sound that was definitely a warning growl. Young-Soo's glow flickered with fear. He stepped back quickly. Maybe they know something we don't, Tai-Ho said quietly. He was still petting the cubs who had settled down around him again. They seemed perfectly content to spend the entire class period just being near him. For the rest of the lesson, Dr. Veltara tried different experiments. She played recordings of various animal sounds to see how the cubs reacted. She showed them images of different species. She even tried different lighting to see if that changed their behavior. Nothing changed their reaction to Tai-Ho. They continued to treat him like pack family. And they continued to see the alien students as either uninteresting or potentially dangerous. When the lesson ended, the cubs were reluctant to go back into their boxes. The smallest one actually tried to hide behind Tai-Ho's legs. It took Dr. Veltara several minutes to convince them to return to their containers. As the students left the classroom, they were all talking about what they had witnessed. But no one had good explanations. Maybe we need to learn more about humans.
Hygiene suggested to her friends. Maybe we need to learn more about predators.
Boram replied. Tai-Ho walked back to his room alone, as usual. But for the first time since arriving at the academy, he didn't feel completely isolated. The cubs had seen something in him that the other students missed. He still didn't understand what it was, but it felt important. That night, he researched Ractharian behavior on his datapad. The more he read, the more confused he became. According to everything he found, what had happened in class should have been impossible. Ractharian cubs were supposed to be suspicious of unknown species. They were supposed to see most other life forms as either threats or prey. They definitely weren't supposed to adopt strangers into their pack. But they had done exactly that with him. As he fell asleep, Tejo wondered what would happen in tomorrow's lesson. Dr. Veltara had said she wanted to try more experiments. Maybe they would finally figure out why the cubs acted so differently around him. Or maybe the mystery would just get deeper. Dr. Veltara had spent the entire night researching. She had contacted zoologists, behaviorists, and experts on predator psychology from across the galaxy. She had studied every piece of information she could find about both humans and Ractharians, and she had found something very interesting. When class began on the third day, she looked different. Her fur was a deep orange color, which meant she was excited about something important. She had a large data pad in her hands and several holographic displays ready. Today, we will answer the questions that have puzzled us for the past 2 days, she announced. The students took their usual positions. The metal boxes were in the center of the room again, but Dr. Veltara didn't open them immediately. Before we release our young friends, I want to share what I have learned, she said. The behavior you have witnessed is not random. It is not magic. It is the result of something very specific about human evolution. She activated her first holographic display. It showed a 3-dimensional image of Earth. Humans evolved on a planet called Earth, she continued. Most of you probably think you know about human evolution. You have been told that humans are weak, primitive creatures who only recently discovered space travel. Young-Soo nodded. Everyone knows that. Humans are barely above subsistence-level intelligence. Dr. Veltara's fur flickered with what might have been amusement. That is what most species believe. But it is not the complete truth. She changed the display to show various Earth animals. There were images of lions, tigers, bears, and other predators. Earth is what we call a death world, she said. It is a planet where life competes violently for survival. Most planets in the galaxy are much more peaceful, but Earth is different. The students looked at the images with fascination and fear. Some of the Earth predators looked incredibly dangerous. Humans evolved on this death world, Dr. Veltara continued, but they did not evolve to be prey animals, like most intelligent species in the galaxy. They evolved to be predators. The room went completely silent. Several students looked at Tejo with new expressions. He was sitting in his usual spot waiting for the cubs to be released. But humans don't look like predators, Boram said. Her crystal skin was flashing with confusion. They don't have claws or fangs. That is because they are a very unusual type of predator, Dr. Veltara explained. Most predators in the galaxy are ambush hunters. They hide and attack quickly, or they are pack hunters who work together to bring down large prey quickly. She changed the display again. Now it showed early humans running across a vast landscape. Humans are persistence predators. They hunt by chasing their prey for very long distances, sometimes for days or even weeks. They never stop following. They never give up. Eventually, their prey becomes too tired to run anymore. The alien students stared at the images. They showed humans running mile after mile, following animals that were much larger and stronger than they were. This type of hunting is very rare in the galaxy, Dr. Veltara said. It requires incredible endurance, determination, and mental strength. Most species cannot do it. Woojin raised his hand. But how does that explain why the cubs like Tejo? Excellent question, Dr. Veltara replied. She activated another display. Persistence predators have very specific psychological and biological traits. They must be calm under pressure. They cannot panic or give up. They must be able to think many steps ahead. The display showed brain scans comparing humans to other species. Humans have a unique combination of predator instincts and pack behavior, she explained. They hunt as individuals, but they live in social groups. This makes them very unusual in the galaxy. She paused and looked directly at Tejo. Ractharian cubs are trained from birth to recognize different types of hunters. Their survival depends on knowing who is dangerous and who is not. When they look at most galactic species, they see prey animals that evolve to run and hide. The students were beginning to understand, but when they look at a human, They see something different. They see a fellow apex predator, someone who hunts for a living, someone who never gives up. So Young spoke up, her voice shaking slightly. You're saying that humans are actually dangerous? I'm saying that humans are persistence predators, Dr. Veltara corrected. Whether that makes them dangerous depends on the situation. She opened her datapad and read from her notes. I contacted an expert on human history last night. She told me some very interesting facts. Before humans developed modern technology, they regularly hunted animals much larger than themselves. Mammoths, giant bison, creatures that could easily kill a human in direct combat. The display showed images of these ancient hunts, but humans didn't fight them directly. They followed them for days until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. Then they killed them safely. Minsu's 6 arms were moving nervously. How long could they run? Human hunters could track prey for up to 2 weeks without stopping, Dr. Veltara said. They would run during the day and track at night. They would continue no matter what the weather was like, no matter how tired they became. The room was very quiet now. Everyone was looking at Taiho with new eyes. The expert also told me about human warfare, Dr. Veltara continued. When humans fight wars, they often win by simply refusing to give up. They will continue fighting even when the situation seems hopeless. This is persistence predator behavior. She changed the display to show Taiho's biometric readings from the past 2 days. Look at these measurements. While you were all showing signs of stress and fear around the cubs, Taiho's heart rate remained steady. His breathing was calm. His body language showed no fear at all. It was true. The readings showed that while every alien student had been scared, Taiho had been completely relaxed. This is predator behavior, Dr. Veltara explained. Prey animals show fear when they encounter dangerous predators. But predators do not fear other predators. They assess them as either threats or potential allies. Now it was time for the demonstration. Dr. Veltara opened the first box. The largest cub emerged and immediately looked for Taiho. When it spotted him, its entire body language changed to the friendly, relaxed posture they had seen before. The other cubs had the same reaction. They ignored the alien students and went straight to Taiho. Watch their behavior carefully, Dr. Veltara instructed. They are not treating him like prey. They are not treating him like a threat. They are treating him like a fellow hunter. The cubs settled around Taiho just as they had the previous days, but now the alien students understood what they were seeing. The cubs recognize him as an apex predator, Dr. Veltara explained. Their instincts tell them that he is someone who hunts successfully, someone who never gives up, someone who is dangerous to his enemies but safe for his allies. Heejin's skin patches were flashing rapidly, but he seemed so normal, so peaceful. Persistence predators are often very calm and peaceful, Dr. Veltara said. They do not need to be aggressive or threatening. They know that if they need to hunt something, they can simply follow it until it cannot run anymore. She pulled up more data on her pad. I also learned something else interesting. Humans have only been part of galactic civilization for 5 years, but in that time they have never lost a war. They have never given up on a goal they considered important, and they have never failed to complete a mission once they commit to it. Youngsu's glow flickered uncertainly. That could just be luck, could it? Dr. Veltara asked. Or could it be persistence predator behavior? The refusal to give up no matter how difficult the situation becomes? She activated a final display. It showed statistics comparing human achievement to other species. Humans have colonized more new worlds per year than any other species. They have solved more technical problems. They have completed more deep space explorations. And they have done all of this in just 5 years. The numbers were impressive, and they painted a picture of a species that simply did not know how to quit. The reason other species consider humans primitive is because humans only recently developed space travel, Dr. Veltara concluded. But they didn't need space travel for survival. They had already conquered their entire planet through persistence hunting and persistence behavior. She looked around the room at all the students. The cubs recognize what many of us have missed. Humans are not weak. They are not primitive. They are apex persistence predators who have only recently turned their attention to the galaxy. The cubs were purring again, content to be near someone they recognized as a fellow hunter. The alien students stared at them and at Taiho with completely new understanding. Everything they thought they knew about humans had just changed. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Taeho felt like he understood his place. He wasn't the weak, primitive student that everyone pitied. He was a predator among prey animals, and finally someone else had noticed. News of Dr. Veltara's lesson spread through the academy like wildfire. By the next morning, students from every class were talking about the human and the predator cubs. The story grew with each telling, but the basic facts remained the same. The dangerous Raktharian cubs had chosen to trust the human student that everyone had dismissed as weak and primitive. Taeho noticed the change immediately. When he walked through the hallways, students no longer avoided him. Instead, they stared at him with curious, nervous expressions. Some whispered to their friends as he passed. Others just watched him with new respect. In the cafeteria, Youngsu approached his table for the first time ever. The Etherean's usual confident glow was dimmed with uncertainty. "Can I sit here?" Youngsu asked. Taeho looked up from his lunch, surprised. "Sure." Youngsu sat down but seemed uncomfortable. He fidgeted with his food tray and kept glancing at Taeho. "I wanted to apologize," Youngsu finally said, "for the things I said about humans. About you." "It's okay," Taeho replied. "You didn't know, but I should have," Youngsu insisted. "I made assumptions without learning the facts. That was wrong." Other students began approaching the table. Boram sat down carefully, her crystal skin reflecting nervousness and curiosity. Minsu joined them. All 6 arms moving in what Taeho had learned was a gesture of respect among Valdorians. "Is it true what Dr. Veltara said?" Boram asked quietly. "About humans being persistence predators?" Taeho thought about the question. "I never thought of it that way before, but I guess it makes sense." "What do you mean?" Hyojin asked as she sat down. Her skin patches were glowing with genuine interest. "Well, on Earth, humans do tend to be very determined," Taeho explained. "When we decide we want something, we usually keep trying until we get it. Even if it takes a very long time." He paused, thinking about his own experience, like coming to this academy. "I applied 3 times before I was accepted. Most species would have given up after the first rejection." Dayun fluttered her wing arms thoughtfully. "My people would have given up immediately. Rejection means the goal is impossible. But for humans, rejection just means we need to try harder," Taeho said. "Or try a different approach. But we don't usually give up." More students gathered around the table. Soon Taeho was surrounded by classmates who had never shown interest in talking to him before. "What about hunting?" Wu Jin asked through his breathing mask. "Do humans really chase prey for days?" "Not anymore," Taeho said. "We have technology now. But in the old days, yes. My grandfather told me stories about his grandfather, who used to hunt deer by tracking them through the forest for days until they were too tired to run." The alien students looked fascinated and slightly scared. "That sounds terrifying," So Young said, "being chased by something that never stops following you." "It was very effective," Taeho admitted. "Humans became the top predator on Earth because we were the only species that could hunt anything, no matter how big or fast it was." Junho shifted into a more compact form, which he did when he was thinking hard. "Is that why the cubs liked you? Because they could sense that you're a predator?" "I think so," Taeho said. "Dr. Veltara explained it pretty well. They recognize something in me that you don't see in most galactic species." "What do you mean?" Mira asked. She had been quietly listening from the edge of the group. Taeho considered his words carefully. "Most of your species evolved from prey animals. Your instincts tell you to avoid danger, to run from threats, to find safety in groups. Those are good survival strategies," the students nodded. This matched what they knew about their own evolutionary history. "But humans evolved differently," Taeho continued. "Our instincts tell us to chase challenges, to confront threats, to keep going even when things seem impossible. We're wired to hunt, not to hide." The conversation was interrupted when Dr. Veltara approached their table. Her fur was bright green, which meant she was pleased about something. "I'm glad to see you all talking," she said. "I was hoping my lesson would encourage more interaction between species." "Dr. Veltara," Boram said, "we've been thinking about what you taught us. Are there other predator species in the galaxy?" "Yes, of course," Dr. Veltara replied. "But most of them are ambush predators or pack hunters. Persistence predators like humans are extremely rare." "Why is that?" Minsu asked. "Because persistence hunting requires a very specific combination of traits," Dr. Veltara explained. "Physical endurance, mental determination, social cooperation, and advanced problem-solving abilities. Very few species develop all of these traits together. She pulled out her data pad and showed them some images. Most predator species are either very strong but not very smart, or very smart but not very persistent. Humans are unusual because they combine high intelligence with incredible determination. Young-Su's glow brightened with understanding. That's why humans have been so successful since joining galactic civilization. They apply persistence predator behavior to everything they do. Exactly, Dr. Veltara said. When humans encounter a problem, their first instinct is not to avoid it or find an easier path. Their instinct is to keep working on it until they solve it. She showed them more data from her research. I contacted several human colonies yesterday. I asked them about their problem-solving approaches. Every single colony reported the same pattern. When they encounter difficulties, they simply keep trying different solutions until something works. Tejo nodded. My father always told me that most problems aren't really impossible. They just require more effort than most people are willing to give. That's persistence predator thinking, Dr. Veltara confirmed, and it's why the cubs trusted you immediately. Predators recognize other predators. Over the following days, Tejo's experience at the academy changed completely. Students who had ignored him before now sought him out for conversations. They asked him about Earth, about human history, and about how persistence predators thought about problems. Some of the conversations were awkward at first. The alien students had to adjust their understanding of what it meant to be human, but gradually they began to appreciate the different perspective that Tejo brought to their discussions. In study groups, Tejo's approach to difficult problems proved valuable. When other students became frustrated and wanted to give up, Tejo would suggest trying different approaches. His refusal to accept defeat as an option inspired the others to keep working. Boram found this especially helpful. Xantharis usually abandon projects that don't work quickly, she told Tejo. But working with you has taught me that sometimes the best solutions only come after many failures. The Raktharian cubs became regular visitors to Dr. Veltara's classroom. She had decided to keep them for the rest of the semester as part of an ongoing study of predator behavior. They continued to show the same preference for Tejo's company. But something interesting happened as the other students learned more about persistence predator behavior. The cubs began to show more interest in them too. I think they're recognizing that you're learning predator-like thinking, Dr. Veltara explained. When you refuse to give up on difficult problems, you're acting more like hunters and less like prey. Young-Su was particularly proud when one of the cubs actually approached him without showing any signs of aggression. It took 3 weeks, he told his friends, but I finally convinced it that I'm not just prey. The change in attitudes wasn't limited to Tejo's classmates. Word spread throughout the academy about the lesson with the predator cubs. Students from other classes began looking at the few human students with new respect. Faculty members also took notice. Several professors contacted Dr. Veltara to ask about incorporating her findings into their own courses. The Academy's administration decided to fund a full research project on the implications of human persistence predator behavior. Tejo found himself invited to participate in discussions about curriculum development. His perspective as a persistence predator was considered valuable for understanding how different species approached learning and problem-solving. Humans have a different relationship with failure than most species, he explained, to a group of faculty members. For us, failure isn't a sign that we should stop. It's information that helps us improve our next attempt. Dr. Veltara published her research findings in the Galactic Journal of Xenobiology. The paper, titled Persistence Predator Recognition Behaviors in Juvenile Raktharians, became one of the most read articles in the journal's history. But the real impact was in the academy itself. The artificial separation between the primitive human student and his advanced alien classmates had broken down completely. Students began forming mixed species, study groups that included humans specifically, because of their persistence predator approach to difficult problems. These groups consistently outperformed single-species groups on challenging assignments. The Academy administration noticed this success and decided to actively recruit more human students. They realized that the persistence predator perspective was valuable for the educational environment. 6 months after the lesson with the Raktharian cubs, Tejo was no longer the lonely outsider sitting by himself in the back of the classroom. He was at the center of a diverse group of friends who had learned to appreciate what persistence predators could contribute.